Chinoitika ndechekuti pane utongi hwechidzvanyiriri anetongwa nemafascist. The end justifies the means, and it's also always by any means necessary. And also it's also about creating my mirage all the time, and also creating my issues ekuti vanhu vaite deal with all the time. Vanhu havawani zororo. Every day you have a new issue coming up, and the intention is to hide the actual problem. So you find kuti where you have vana 2030 vana chichi izvo zvekutwista constitution zvekuita sei. Those are things you would call my side issues. The real issue is where we started. The unconstitutionality of a government that comes in by way of a coup. This is what they want you to forget. The unconstitutionality of a government that steals elected parliamentarians from an opposition soon after an election and creates a two-thirds majority. And then gives itself this advantage in preparation for a time like this one, where they will do everything unilaterally. Saka ndo zvinoita fascism izvozvo, ndo zvinoita utongi hwechidzvanyiri, ndozvinoita despotism, because hapana nyaya yepopularity apa. Inyaya yekushandisa malaws, inyaya yekushandisa the incumbents advantage to the max, and the morality is thrown throughout the window, constitutionality is thrown out through the window. So when you try to reason and see kuti mutemo unopinda papi, mutemo uchakwana papi, mutemo hausi kuteedzerwa, you find kuti inenge iri waste of time, because these guys have nothing to do with the law. The law only matters to them when it's used against opponents to give them advantage. So ndo patiri papa pane ZANU-PF. This has always been in the making. I think we all watched in real time when this was happening, when a coup was being instituted, and typical of us Zimbabweans, because we've been oppressed for a very long time. We just watched from sidelines. And the government accuse ZANU-PF accuse that today maipemberera, you were part of it, but we were not actually part of the process. I think what people were on about was kuti at least there's something that has happened to Mugabe, who was one of the most hated men in history in Zimbabwe. But we knew, people knew kuti probably this is not going very far, because when you have the military taking over, you know that your rights have been completely swept. And when you can't talk about the constitution when you have an unconstitutional system that has come into place. So ndo patiri apa. So zvese zvinotaurwa nana Ziyambi nana chichi zvinenge zvakuzoitika zviya, it's part of what has always been happening tichiona, and we can't be surprised now that this is what's happening. Saka taapa papa crisis mode, which has always been what Zimbabwe has always been. Kuti Zimbabwe has been ruled by crisis after crisis since 1980. And you cannot be surprised that our country is stunted politically. Our country is stunted economically. Like Dobbs has been saying, kuti pane a lot of uncertainty. Uncertainty yanakutanga zvino, yakatanga way back in 1980, when this government, which has always been in power, was always making all the blunders, typical blunders of a despotic system. Zvinoita kuti system isatomboshanda zvachose. So patiri apa paAngo Jeds, this has always been in the making for a very, very, very long time, and we can't be surprised as Zimbabweans. What we really need to talk about is good. Where to from now? Because pane nyaya ZANU-PF yakazvipinza nebamba, yakazvipinza nechisimba. Ipapo hatina kudhila napo. Patinofanira kudhila napo ipapo kuti military up to today haisati yaita withdraw from the system. Military ichirimo within the system, and mutemo haushandi pakadare papo. Mutemo in effect wakakandwa through the window. Havana kuzvitaura havo, but there's a sense in which in effect you can actually have mutemo out through the window. And because simply government is going to ignore what matters most to the people, and then choosing what to pick from the law to give themselves advantage. So izvi zvana 2030 izvi chero zvikabuda chero zvisakabuda time pushing management yeZANU-PF yainoita introducing a lot of issues that zvamunoziva nanko jezi kudebate maita madebate kuchikoro zvana gish galloping kuti when you deal with your opponents kudebate unointroduce maissues akawandisa ekuti opponent yako inozochaya kuziva kuti ndoagiwa against zvipi manje ndoita ndooposa zvipi pane zvataurwa apa ndoita rebut zvipi apa ndo zvinoita madespots izvozvezvo. They introduce issue after issue after issue after issue to you. At the end of the day, you get confused, and this is how they run the country. So, mataura kuti vacho vakazvipa 2/3 majority, yes vanayo. Vakatora nyika by coup, zvandawedzera zviya, yes vakatora. So they can always do whatever they want. So up to isusu citizens with these agents that yatanayo. For the in fact not yatanayo yatagara tinayo kubva 2017 todi akomana because we can't go on for another 45 years, which is possible because if you go back in our history, our country was taken over in 1890 and we were only able to achieve some level of independence in 1980, which was about 9 years. So I'm hoping we are not going to go the distance again like we did colonial takeover of this country. ZANU-PF took over in 1980. It is worse than the colonial takeover because it is hard to stomach a situation whereby the so-called liberation fighters are now the takers, the grabbers of that freedom that we so yearned for. Thank you, Uncle Jet.
Welcome to Zim One, a platform where every voice matters and every idea counts. This is a space dedicated to nation building, shaped by the thoughts, hopes, and lived experiences of the people of Zimbabwe. From the streets to the classrooms, from farms to factories, from elders to the youth, we bring together brilliant points from different gatherings of citizens across our nation. These are conversations rooted in reality, driven by patriotism, and guided by the belief that Zimbabwe's future is built by its people. Here, we listen, we reflect, and we share ideas that inspire unity, progress, and sustainable development. This channel is not about politics alone. It is about solutions. Not about division, but about collective responsibility. Join us as Zimbabweans from all walks of life contribute insights that strengthen our communities, uplift our nation, and shape the Zimbabwe we all want to see. This is our voice. This is our vision. This is nation building together.